Good morning. I'm here with Steve Darden. And Steve, first off, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Good morning, Reid. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to your listeners today. Well, I'm a native of Johnson City, so I'm a native of the Congressional district that I seek to represent. I come from a long line of Dardens and Strains from Jonesboro. Robert Strain is a veteran of the War of 1812. He's buried in the Urbana Cemetery. And if you look to Virginia, I have an ancestor who was a drummer in General Washington's Continental Army. So the Darden side has been around for a long time. My mother's side of the family has a little briefer history in the United States, but their story is one of the American dream. My mother was born in Greenville, and her parents immigrated here from Albania. So those are my grandparents on my mother's side. Very interestingly, my grandfather came over in 1909, and the plan was for him to get established, and then he would call for my grandmother. Well, getting established took a while, and she didn't come over till 1921. So they were apart for 12 years. But ultimately, they settled in Greenville. He had a couple of restaurants here and worked very, very hard to make it in this country. So that's a little bit about my family. Now, my marriage is with the former Ann Spurrell. She and I have been married for 30 years. We have a couple of kids, and they're adults and now out of the home. All of us were educated in the Johnson City schools. That is my wife, myself, our children. And I've had a professional life that involved 35 years of practicing law and serving as a mediator. I'm a partner in a law firm. I'm now on leave of absence, but I'm a part owner of the business, part owner of our building in Kingsport. And I think that my business ownership sets me apart from the other candidates in this race because it also features 10 years on the Johnson City Commission. I served alongside with our current Congressman, Phil Rowe. He and I both served as mayors of Johnson City, and I hope, like him, to ascend to the position of congressman for the 1st Congressional District, and that's why I'm seeking the Republican nomination.
So why specifically have you decided to run for U.S. Congress?
Well, I'm running for a simple reason, and that's to make life better for the people who live in our congressional district. Now, there's obviously more motivation to it than that, because I think this is the greatest country that the world has ever seen, and to have the opportunity to lend my skill set, my passion, the remainder of my professional time to serving the nation and serving the people of this congressional district is really an exciting opportunity to me, and I'm very, very passionate about having that chance.
And so what do you think is the biggest issue facing the country right now?
Well, there's no doubt that the biggest issue facing the country is recovering our economy from the COVID-19 crisis. You know, before we went into this period of time where we shut down our economy and really had to shut down our economy to preserve it long term, we were riding the strongest economy perhaps that we've ever had. I don't know if your listeners saw Chairman Powell from the Fed on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago, but that was the point he was making. And so it would suggest that the recovery can be quicker than, say, the recovery after the Great Depression, because the two events are very different. But on my way down here to your studio today, I was listening to a radio, or a podcast, I should say, of Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. And he was talking about the next round of legislation that the Senate is going to consider to help bolster small business and help foster a recovery. The experts tell us it may come really in earnest next month, which would be July, and that would be the beginning of it. So the greatest challenge is to have a sustained recovery from the economic issues that we've been facing. Now, in recent days, the last week and a half, the problem's been compounded by the riots in the streets of our bigger cities. Some of the elements that we need to foster an economic recovery are being harmed through the frustration and the protests. So anyway, we really have now two things that are sort of confronting us. But I'm prepared, I think, with my experience, with my education, with my career and my government experience, to be a good person to help step into the vacancy created by Congressman Rowe's retirement, and to help foster that recovery.
And narrowing it down, what do you think is the biggest issue facing Tennessee?
Well, again, the economy. Now, Tennessee is well positioned, actually, to have a perhaps a more robust recovery long term because of some of the fundamental things in place in Tennessee. No income tax, for example, a very well managed state government. There are going to be businesses from other states who are going to look to relocate to a state like Tennessee, and I think we can reap those rewards. So the challenge is going to be for us to put our best foot forward and recruit those. And I think our congressional district is certainly a very welcoming place for folks who want to relocate. Also, as we return some of our key manufacturing supply chain components to domestic production from China or other nations, Tennessee has the challenge of providing a workforce really to meet the needs of those employers. And again, I think Tennessee is ahead of the pack in preparedness, but we have our challenges in that regard too.
And what are your plans if you are elected?
Well, I hope to hit the ground running. My brother Bill Darden is Congressman Rowe's district director. And as I said earlier, I served with Congressman Rowe on our city commission. We were both mayors. We've been colleagues and friends for decades. And I have watched and actually gone along for some of the events that the two of them have attended in other counties. I've watched firsthand how hard they work, how committed they are to constituent service, and what a great reputation they've earned for that. So my plan is to demonstrate continuity to the counties in our district, and there are 12 of them, as you know, Greene County being one of them. Each has a sort of a set of unique needs and unique expectations, but the common thread is they appreciate Congressman Rowe's availability, the listening ear he's given, the access they've had, and my brother Bill Darden is a big reason for that. So my plan is to provide the same level of customer and constituent service that they have had, that they've demonstrated, and to offer continuity.
And is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Well, in a race like this where there are 15 folks seeking the Republican nomination, it's important to be able to distinguish yourself to the voters. And I have a number of those things that can be observed on my website, which is stevedarden.com, or on my Facebook page, which is Steve Darden for Congress. We call those the Darden differences. And if folks go to my social media, they can see tributes that people who I've known for years would pay to me, people like my high school football coach, people like the former police chief of Johnson City. I would like for people to know that the things that I did that made Johnson City a better place are things that translate to the national stage, because I think that the success in bringing people together and bringing results and creating a business environment are things that, if done locally, can be extrapolated to the larger federal operation. So as a business owner, as a person with skills that have been honed through the boardrooms and courtrooms of Northeast Tennessee, I believe I can go to Washington and quickly be noticed and quickly build relationships that are going to help us here at home. And that's my aim. And so I appreciate the time on your program. I think there are a lot of Darden differences that I hope the voters will detect over the next 45 to 48 days as we start early voting on July 17th. And I hope that folks will recognize those differences and that it will be their choice after examining the other candidates to vote for me. And I ask everyone who's listening today to do just that.
Well, I want to thank Steve Darden for joining us today.